All right. Well, thank you very much for this incredible honor. I am pleased to be here and grateful. Standing here in the Meadowlands gets my jersey all aflutter, and seeing of incredible graduates who are now in many ways a product of New Jersey and this fine institution gets me even more excited. I have to say you all are lucky because you are surrounded by your family. There were no tickets for this event. I have such an enthusiastic family that for many of my graduations in the past, they almost ruined my political career because of the limited capacity. They counterfeited tickets. I want to just talk with you for a moment about two themes. The first is very obvious. Everyone graduating today is a part of a profound tradition. Those traditions starts with your own families. Individuals that are sitting in these seats and getting their graduation degrees are ones that do not stand on their own. You all each are a part of something deeper and greater and more powerful than you as individuals. I was very fortunate. Every one of my graduations, from my 8th grade graduation right here in New Jersey all the way through, I had family that would come to me to remind me of this important fact, to help me to be grateful and to allow that gratitude to be my gravity, not allowing me to get carried away. In fact, my family loved to tease me on graduation. They would come up to me with the same old jokes I heard from 8th grade until my law school degree, which was, you see, boy, that tassel is worth the hassle. And of course, my grandfather would say, I'm looking at the program here, son, I see you weren't magna cum laude or summa cum laude, you were just thank you, laude, I'm out of here. The truth is that my family would then talk deeply about this tradition. They would say things colorfully like the degree I hold was paid for by the sweat and tears and blood of my ancestors. That I am the physical manifestation of the heroic hope, audacious actions, of leviathans of love, of daring do-gooders who never gave up. My family and your family are not that different in that respect. My father told me time and time again that you need to understand that you are here because people dared to love so hard in their lives that they loved generations yet unborn. That their kindness, that their goodness, and their decency, even though they would never even imagine you would exist, are the reason why you're here today. My father reminds me of that all the time. Born to a single mother, poor in the deep South, he would complain to me when he hears me saying that because he would go so far as to say, son, I was not poor, I was po, P-O, I couldn't afford the other 2 letters. My father was brought up by a young woman who could not take care of him. It was people in his town forming what my dad called a conspiracy of love that made sure that he had a roof over his head and food on the table. I don't even know the names of those people, but for their kindness and goodness and mercy, I am here today. But it didn't stop there. I had the privilege of just last year being a commencement speaker at another commencement in a state that's not my own, down in Tennessee. It was for my mom's graduation from Fisk University, and I'll never forget, I was the graduation speaker on our 50th reunion, and again, my gratitude became my gravity because all she could do was pull me around the night before dinner and introduce me to her classmates, telling me their stories. This is the one that led our student protest. This is the one that led that march. This is the one that went out to register people to vote even though there were death threats against them. It was almost like she was saying to me, boy, don't you forget, pay attention. This person struggled for you. This person fought for you. This person believed in you even when they didn't even know you would come about. That conspiracy of love continued in my life. When my parents got their first jobs, they weren't hiring blacks when they landed in Washington, D.C., but it was this conspiracy of love, people whose names I don't know, black people and white people who came together to help young graduates get their jobs. My father became the first African-American hired by Sinclair Oil, one of the first African-Americans hired by a department store. And then the two of them went on, my mom and dad, to become two of the first blacks hired by a small tech firm you guys might not have heard of called IBM. And then my parents moved here to New Jersey in the late 60s and found that many neighborhoods would not show homes to black families. And again, that conspiracy of love, people whose names I don't know, black folks and white folks who came together through an organization called the Fair Housing Council to help my parents buy their first home. They went out and my parents would go to a house, find out it was sold, they would come back and they would then send a white test couple out to see if the house indeed was already sold, and usually it was not. And the white couple's name was Mr. and Mrs. Brown, I'm told, but they were not brown, they were white. The Browns found a home that my parents loved. And my parents put a bid on it through the Browns. On the day of the closing, my father showed up with a lawyer whose name I don't know. And at that moment, the real estate agent stood up and seeing that he was confronted, actually punched the lawyer in the face, sigged a dog on my dad. Now, the size of the dog is up for some dispute. My father says it was Cujo. My mom will whisper to me it was just Toto. But my parents would tell me as a boy growing up, sitting around my dinner table as I prepared to go on to college myself, they said, boy, don't forget where you come from. All that you are is a result of other people's struggle. Don't walk around here all high on yourself, walking around here like you hit a triple. You were born on third base. You drank deeply from wells of freedom and liberty and opportunity that you did not dig. You drink deeply from wells of freedom and liberty too, but also you eat lavishly from banquet tables. You sit under the shade of trees that you did not plant. You are here because of a conspiracy of love. You must recognize that tradition. And so I stand here today not only to remind you of this on this day, not only to tell you to take a moment to understand that it was not just your hard work, it was not just your sacrifice, but the sacrifices of so many. To remember, as my parents said, that you owe a debt to all of that. But I also stand here to do something different. As much as today is about remembering from whence we came, I simply want to now go to a contradiction. You see, I love contradictions. I think it is in that moment of contradiction that often we get our greatest lessons. I believe that to create wealth, you must give wealth away and create it for others. To obtain freedom, you have to adopt discipline. To gain tomorrow, you have to sacrifice today. To be secure, you've got to take risks. To get up, you have to lift another. To win, you have to find every lesson in loss. To fly, you've got to fall often. And to change the world, you've got to change yourself. I say this because I simply want to end with just two stories about you, because as much as your tradition is important, I want to turn to the wisdom of two individuals who taught me the importance of focusing on who I am. Two simple stories about two individuals, one a very elderly woman and one a 6-year-old boy. Now, the elderly woman happened to be at the very start of my professional career, and she has, maybe some of you might think, the ignominious distinction, when I was not a trained lawyer, to be the first person I ever represented in my life. And I was sent out in New Haven, Connecticut to represent this woman. I remember knocking on her door, and she opened the door, and I remember sort of being struck by her face. Not only was she old and had lines on her face from age, but she also had scars on her face. This humble woman invited me into her home and sat me down, and I was now her lawyer. She was now my client, and she was being evicted, and I was to fight to try to keep her in her homes. But I saw, and you might allow me to change some of the circumstances to respect for the family, but I saw that she was being evicted because she had a 19-year-old nephew that was there to take care of her because she would fall into seizures, thus the scars. and her 19-year-old nephew was caught with drugs. And the housing authority had a rule that if one person in the family is caught with drugs, they evict the whole family. And I thought this was crazy. This woman was just relying on a family member to take care of her. It was not her fault. I left the home and went back to my supervising attorney, all charged up. We are gonna fight this case, I told her. I said, we're gonna get justice and make it happen. And she looked at me sympathetically and she said, Cory, you need to understand something. That you're a lawyer now. You don't represent your own interests and conceptions of justice. You represent a client, and don't disrespect her. She should make her own decisions for her life. Because if you force her to fight this case and she loses, you will go home devastated, but she won't even have a home to go to at all. You need to call her in, explain her rights, and let her make her own choices. Well, I did just that. I brought her in to our legal center for what was perhaps the longest hour of my life, because all this woman, my elder, who I was taught to respect, all she could do during that hour was cry. She was shaken. She didn't know, and she kept saying over and over, why is this happening to me? I've done nothing wrong. But at the end of that hour, I heard a miracle. And I'm a big believer in miracles, and I think we get too caught up in our lives that we often miss God's miracles all around us. And this miracle came in the form of a question. Suddenly, this frail woman that looked so weak and broken, she just closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and opened her eyes and looked at me hard. And she said, just answer me one thing. If I fight this case, will it help other people? And I was surprised by the question, and I told her, I said, look, my supervising attorney has told me she's seen many cases like this. We don't have that much of a chance. It's only a 10 or 15% chance. If we fight this case, it most likely will lose, but if we win, yes, it'll set a precedent. And before you knew it, she suddenly closed her eyes and then opened them again, feeling suddenly changed. It looked like a spirit had come over her, a spirit of strength, a spirit of dignity, a regality, and suddenly she slammed her fist on the table, stood up and said, 10 or 15% is enough for me. We will fight this case. And she strode out of that room with a dignity. It was almost like I saw the true self, that like she had revealed her character. I remember working for 3 days and 3 nights, doing everything I could to prepare for this case. And then on the 4th day, I get a phone call, and I answer the phone, and here is this supervising attorney of mine saying, hey, Cory, I need to tell you something. I said, look, I'm busy. She goes, no, you need to listen and stop. And I stopped, and I go, what's wrong? And she said to me, I'm so sorry, but your client had a heart attack and died last night. And I remember not even waiting. I slammed the phone down. I just felt like erupting in rage. I felt like cussing like a sailor, throwing things around my room. And then suddenly I felt a sense of peace come over to me. And I felt a spirit saying to me that you are so arrogant. Here you thought that God had put the great Cory Booker there to help this poor woman, but the truth of the matter is, God had put this great woman there to help you. You see, for me, it was this understanding that it is, at the end of the day, about who you are. Will you be a person in this world that no matter if circumstances are good or bad, will you have the courage to tell your truth? Can you, in the most savage of circumstances, or in the ease and comfort of the day, can you get up and demonstrate to this world that you are a being powered by goodness, by decency, by mercy, by love? This great woman showed me that in all the world, in my opinion, there is only one power that makes a difference. The Hebrews called it chesed, the Greeks called it agape. It's that word that people say is a soft word or a namby-pamby word, but I'm telling you, it is a strong word. It is not a being word, but it is an acting word. It is a word that demands courage, that demands resiliency. It's that word love, and that we must love big every day and love small, because the biggest thing you can do in every single day is a small act of kindness. We must love. And when love fails, You lick your wounds, you wrap them in bandage, and you get up for another day of loving, because you were not called in this world to be successful. It was Mother Teresa, when she was asked, well, how do you define success? She goes, I wasn't called to be successful. I was called to be faithful, faithful, faithful. And that is the test. Will you be faithful to your truth? Will you play small and shrink from the world, or will you be large and let your light live? This has been the gift of Newark, New Jersey to me. Every day I meet people who, whether in challenging circumstance or even riding high on success, demonstrate to me that they have within their heart an indefatigable courage to be loving. My first tenant president in the first high-rise buildings I lived in, I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, boy, the world outside of you is a reflection of what you have inside of you. Don't be negative. That if you want to make a difference in the world, if you want to see hope and opportunity and possibility in the world, manifest it first in your heart. Now, I'll give you one last example of this before I go on to my final point. And that is an example I shared with some FDU students earlier this year, and please don't make fun of me, because it reveals my inadequacies. You see, it happened to me when I was flying cross country as a college student. I got on a plane to go from Newark Airport to San Francisco, and I was really excited because I'm a very big guy, and back in those days I was a college football player, and if you will please just close your eyes and imagine me chiseled for a second. Right now I just jiggle, but please see me as chiseled, huge guy, and it was a packed plane, crowded, every seat taken except for my row. The whole row was open. I was so thrilled. I sat down, the door to the plane closed, and I started just rejoicing. I knew that God loved me more than all these people. And I sat there enjoying myself. And before you know it, just when I was starting to sing my songs from church, yes, Jesus loves me, the door to the plane opens and the cabin fills with a cacophonous noise, screaming like somebody was being injured. Everybody stopped what they were doing, looked to see what kind of beast would be walking through that door, and in came this woman with a toddler and a baby. Everybody on the plane stopped looking at her and then slowly looked back at me, and I could see they were all thinking, you smug young man, it serves you right. They came back and they said, we're sitting here, and I said, oh my God, here's this woman with this woofer and tweeter in one arm and a nuclear-powered speaker in the other, and they sat down. And this was the test. This wasn't some dramatic moment. The question was, would I surrender to circumstances as they are, or would I take responsibility and change them? You see, the greatest power we have in every moment is to make that choice. We cannot control stimulus, but we can always control response. It's not the world that defines you, it's how you choose to act within it. And so, I took a deep breath, and I said, this is either gonna be the worst flight of my life, or I can make it the best. And I decided I was gonna make it the best, so I started making all kind of faces at that baby, paralyzing muscles. And then as we started taking off, I played tic-tac-toe and hangman with the family, and before you knew it, this woman who was embarrassed, who was flying with her kids, everybody was looking at her meanly, we were all having fun. I started telling that kid all the best jokes I know appropriate for a 7-year-old. And I got lots of material. Why did Tigger and Eeyore have their heads in the toilet? Because they were looking for poo. We landed, and it was the greatest flight I'd ever had at 19 years old. We exchanged addresses, but we didn't keep in touch. Life's busy, but 15 years later, I get a letter. I'm running for mayor of Newark, New Jersey. It's 2002, and I'm getting my backside kicked royally. It was a street fight on my most discouraging day. I get a letter in the mail from the woman saying, you may not remember me, but I met you 15 years ago on a flight. My family owns a company in Newark. We employ residents. I've told them all about you. And then she said something to me After telling me that that young boy was now a man, he became one of our best campaign volunteers, then she said something to me that every politician loves to hear. She said, "I'd like to make a campaign contribution." This is your gift to the world. You will not know what circumstances hit you. There will be days that you feel broken and that you'll define courage as just getting out of the bed and putting your feet on the floor. Never forget that even in that moment, your greatest power is not in changing circumstances, but choosing the attitude that you will bring into that world that day. And that attitude can change things. It can change you. And that brings me to my final quick story. There is a young man that I met as a college student in an after-school program, or a summer program, where I was just working with this bunch of kids, and at the end of the summer, I had to leave them with a message. It was a graduation, if you will. And I had no original wisdom to share with these kids, so I chose a story from my high school days. I was a football player, and we had a motivational speaker that came in and did this exercise where he said, "I want everybody in this room to raise your hands as high as you can." And we were football players. We shot our hands up, and we said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Now you got them as high as you can?" And we said, "Yes, sir." And they said, "Now go 3 inches higher." And we looked at each other, and some guy stepped on his tiptoes, and then we all did, and then he pounced on us with this message. He goes, "In life, you can always get 3 inches more." He said, "You can always do better, you can always go more." And we loved it. We were football players. We went, "Rawr," and we ran outside and gotten ready to hit things. Something I feel like doing in my job now. And so I got the kids together, and I did this exercise. I said, "All right, kids, they're ages 6 to 12. I said, "Raise your hands." And immediately the kids said that word to me that they said all summer. "No, we don't want to do it." They crossed their arms. And I said, "Oh my God." And then one kid did it. He was the good kid. He was the one that always cooperating. And then everybody jumped on him. "Man, put your arms down. You got BO. I don't want to smell that. We just want to go home." And so I did what I've learned is one of the most powerful acts of persuasion in humankind. I reached my hand in my pocket, and I pulled out a $5 bill, and I decided to bribe them. I can see the headlines tomorrow. Cory Booker tells graduates to bribe people. And all of a sudden, these kids, that capitalist instinct shot up in the air. As I held my $5, I watched smugly as the kids compared themselves, and I was about to pounce on them with the lesson of 3 inches. And then to my left was a 6-year-old boy, the youngest, the shortest, and the cutest of them all. And I thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, this kid can't compete." He had his arms crossed, his face was in a pout, he was looking at the kids, he looked so sad and frustrated. And I said, "Oh my God, I gotta go over them and put my hand on his back and tell him, 'Oh, you can't compete, don't worry about it, it's just an exercise.'" And as soon as I walked past him, towards him, he turns around and sprints out the door, running as fast as his little legs would carry him. I said, "Oh, he's running away." And I ran after him, caught him in 3 strides, picked him up. He's wiggling to let go. He said, "Let me go." And I said, "No." I turned him around, he said, "Let me go." And I said, "Why?" He looked over at the kids still raising their hands and looked back at me. And he said, "You said you'd give $5 to the kid who could raise his hand the highest, right?" And I said, "Right." And he said, "Well, let me go because I know a way to get to the roof." I gave him the $5. And so this is where I conclude. Understand this, graduates of 2012. You are here for a purpose. You did not get here on your own. Standing underneath you, you are on the shoulders, realize that, of true heroes, not the kinds you read about in papers. They're the family that's sitting around you in this great arena. The people that got you here, you don't even know their names. And your biggest obligation to them is to tell your truth to this world, to have courage in your convictions, to be dedicated to the highest ideal, which is living up to your highest ideals. It is not shrinking, not giving this world a carbon copy. You must find your way to the roof. This world needs that kind of leadership. If you find hard days, remember, as the words of Henley says, it matters not how straight the gate or how many punishments of the skull on the scroll, you are the master of your fate. You are the captain of your soul. You have to work to tell your truth. Remember the words of Douglas, who said, in life, you don't get everything you pay for, but you must pay for everything that you get. Find your way to making a change in this world. But remember what King said, change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability. It must be carried in on the backs of people that are willing to do it. Find your way, because this world is a democracy that we live in, and it's not a spectator sport. You have to be in the game. Find your way, because you were not built to simply seek comfort and convenience. I would rather have my ship sunk at sea than rot in the harbor. You must go out in the world and find your way. Find your way to your truth. Find your way to your light. Find your way to tell this world why you were born. And when you do find your way, when you stand on that roof, when you have reached the pinnacles of success as you defined it, when the world sees you for who you are, don't just stand there and have everybody look at you in awe. Stand there so that you inspire others to join you as well, that you reach your hand back and lift them up. Because if you in your generation do these things, if you live with this conviction, if you have the courage to shine your light, if you tell your truth in ways small and large, then perhaps you can be the generation that finally proves true to the oath sworn by people coast to coast when they put their hands on their heart and say those 5 words, that we are a nation of liberty and justice for all. We are not there yet, but I believe this will be the generation that finds a way. God bless you, and congratulations.